Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm sitting here with Michael, and today we're going to discuss AI safety and regulation. But before we dive in, Michael, please introduce yourself so everyone in the audience is familiar about your background.
Not a problem. My name is Mike Stattelman. I'm here in the United Arab Emirates. We run a company called Falcons.ai, all about AI for good. So I think this is a highly relevant topic.
Thanks. I wanted to start off with a bit of a general question. So do you think that the rapid innovation that has been seen in the open source AI is compromising safety standards in any way, or does it actually enhance the development of safer AI technologies?
So I think your answer is 1 million% yes to both. I think anytime you start, expanding on innovating any new technology, there are unknown risks because it's innovation, right? It's new. So we haven't, put cultures and customs and norms and regulations in place that can, stave off the dangers of this because it's all new. So the answer is 1,000 times yes. It was the same with knives. It was the same with cars, which it still is. I mean, that's just even phones, right? We're still figuring out, what's the regulation for phones? Is it okay in schools? Is it okay in certain settings? Things like that. So I just think it's on par with typical technological innovation.
Okay, makes sense. I think what sets it apart is that this time, this innovation might have a lot of dangers that are hidden. And so this is the big debate, open source versus closed source. And I'm wondering to get your, open source LLMs, large language models versus closed source.
Right.
That's what I meant.
Okay. I'll explain. In computer science, we're familiar with the Ashby's law of requisite variety, right? So basically, any system that you have, whatever's controlling it, has to have the same number of states. So a prime example is a light bulb, right? It's a light bulb have off and on, right?
Yeah.
So how many states does the light switch have? The control structure.
I don't
know. Off and on, right? So the problem with AI is we don't know the number of states available. So we can't, span the controls right now currently to control, right? It's too fast, it's too vast from a human planning perspective. So I think that goes along with what you were saying about, yes, there are risks and they are, being magnified. But that's just, once again, that's the nature of technology. I think we just have to get into what is the upper bound of the control structure, or what is the upper bound of the states of this system, and then that'll give us our upper bound for our control structure.
And speaking of open source and closed source LLMs, I'm wondering, do you think what do you think are the challenges that regulators might face with closed source system and regulating closed source system compared to open source systems? And in systems, I mean large language models.
To be completely honest, and this is not by any stretch a shot at anybody in the political space or the regulatory space, right? Is to hire companies like Falcons.ai, like Lyrise, pay the smart people the money that know what's actually happening, so you know how to regulate it, right? I think a lot of times there's a level of ignorance around the way technology moves so fast. You have lawyers and doctors and dentists and politicians and these very specific domains, and they're focused on that. So it would be ludicrous for us to assume that they should actually know about AI. But the onus is on them, being responsible for a populace, to say, I don't know this stuff. So let me not just listen to the people that are making it, the big tech, so to speak. Let me hire some really smart people, pay them really well to break down what's actually happening, where some of these risks are, and a way to implement this regulation. So the closed source, it's not going to change. they'll never be 100% transparent. It's just like with any company. No company is 100% transparent. So, it's just, I think with AI, it just takes on a much bigger and much faster scope and spectrum than just human driven endeavors, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to actually a little bit push on that point, because while I agree that you should ask people who are actually developing it to speak about regulation, on the other hand, that might create a regulatory capture, because that would have more hurdles for smaller companies to comply with.
that's why I said
Bigger
that
companies have the money to spend on lawyers and all of that. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. That's why I said, outside companies that aren't, big tech, like Lyrise, like Falcons.ai, like these other companies that can say, this is what they mean when they say hallucination. This is, here's the reasons why AI is not sentient right now. This is why large language models are not AGI, because it's just the statistical probability of the next best word, and have somebody in the room that understands it at that level, right, to be able to explain it, and then not have lobbyists from these big tech companies actually write this regulation that box out everybody else. So that's how you avoid regulatory capture. It's just like with anything. It's like with democracy, right? You have enough people voting that you don't have control groups, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same. You just get as many smart people. Governments around the world need to get as many smart people as possible to make these decisions, and not smart people that are paid for by these big tech firms. My opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. I agree with that actually. But something I keep wondering about is, and I'm curious to get your perspective as a AI expert. So you have two ways. Well, at least that's from my perspective. Two ways to regulate. So you can either regulate the data and what goes in, or you can actually regulate the model itself and what goes out. If you're a closed source, if you have a closed source LLM like OpenAI, that would be very difficult to show, because that's actually a trade secret. So I'm just curious to get your opinion while you're building tools, while you're building different AI solutions. Like if you are to comply with certain regulation, what type of regulation do you think would make most sense, and why?
Data. So it would be hard to control what comes in as well as what goes out, because we don't know what people are putting into our systems, right? I mean, we can capture every prompt or something like that, but I mean, think about the large volumes of prompts that they're ingesting daily. How many Google searches are there a day, right? That's what it's going to be here in a couple of years. So I would say you'd be better off regulating the data that builds these systems, ensuring that there is adequate variability in the data as it relates to representation of certain populations, right? So if you're going to have something that is, psychographically inclined for psychological analysis, right? Wouldn't it be better for you to have all of the religions represented in there as well? Because that controls a lot of the morality and a lot of the psychology that a lot of people act on in the world.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to just having, we're going to do this demographic, this psychographic. Well, have a more robust data set that's more representative of the population that's going to be using it, right?
Yeah.
Just like with facial analysis. Same with facial analysis. Who's getting hammered right now by facial analysis? The reality, non-Western white males. If you are a non-Western white male, facial recognition technology is still not your friend based on the data sets that it was trained on. So there needs to be more, variability and representation in the data. So you regulate the data. I don't want to see your model. I don't care if that's a trade secret. Show me the data that it was trained on. So you can easily find, imbalances in the data sets.
But what if because some of the models, actually, I would say maybe most of them have reinforcement learning. So, for example, if I now upload a picture on OpenAI, on ChatGPT, and I ask it a question, and then I say, oh yeah, that's true or that's not, it's learning. So how do you then control these inputs of data that comes from the users? Have you thought about that? I'm just curious. That's the first thought that came into my mind when you were mentioning data.
So I think that certain tech companies have been abusing terms of service, end user licensing agreement for years, right? That's just not even a secret. They make them so long that the average user doesn't want to read them, and they have no idea what they're actually signing up for or agreeing to have done with their data. Just make that part of the audit. User data now becomes part of the audit, proprietary or not. If a user in Egypt, this is the Egyptian government, if a user in Egypt puts in data into OpenAI, if we deem necessary to audit your systems, every piece of data that came from an Egyptian IP or an Egyptian account holder, we should be able to audit that just for, I don't want to, okay, I'm sounding a little bit.
No, we're speculating. We're just speculating. It's just a discussion.
I don't want to push the narrative. I don't want to push the narrative that government should have control to peer into social data or AI training data. I'm just saying this is just one avenue that could be better fleshed out, better looked at. But once again, it's going to take these governments hiring some really smart people and paying them really well to
to figure it out
and digest it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And earlier you were speaking about facial recognition, and I know that you guys are developing a ton of solutions with AI face recognition. Personally, I really like the one that you showed me last time about guessing the age of someone.
Right.
Everyone should go and check it out. Really interesting. But as you develop it, you mentioned, okay, if you're non-Western white male, there is a skew in the data set. But I am assuming when you develop a solution, you have to face certain ethical dilemmas. Do I want to ship fast, or do I want to keep fine-tuning? And actually, this was also what we saw in the last couple of days, was the same dilemma in OpenAI. Do we ship fast, or do we actually care more about safety and all that? Just curious to hear your thoughts. Have you had such dilemmas in the past? What was your decision tree when you had it?
So there's the Venn diagram, right? You can have it good, fast, or cheap. Pick two. Yeah. So it kind of comes to that, but I think this is the critical importance of the open source community. Places like Hugging Face data sets. So there's always a way to augment and add to make data sets more robust. So if me being in the UAE, I have a client that only wants to use it, in this given endeavor, my data set's going to be probably more along the lines of resembling the people in this region, right? Is that fair for expats? I mean, I try to have a balanced data set anyway, so I just think the focus should be more on the robustness and the overall accuracy as opposed to the speed, because you could have a facial recognition system or a facial detection system, and if somebody came up to your camera with a drawing of SpongeBob, you wouldn't want that to fly, right? So yeah. It all depends on good, fast, or cheap. What do you want? But I think that data sets need to continue to be augmented by the open source community. And here's a problem that can easily be addressed by the university systems of the world. So when you have students coming through your AI master's or bachelor's programs, or your computer science deep learning programs, have part of their capstone project to contribute to an open source data set.
That's brilliant. That's actually a brilliant solution, because then each university is contributing to the database of their own country. So then by definition, all the models implemented in their own country would be more accurate. Actually, that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then at the end, right? At the end, if you had somebody that had the hardware space, right, and the compute power, look at the volume of data they would have that would be catch so many edge cases that they can't even capture right now. Right? And that goes for linguistics. That goes for everything. If these universities got more involved in spreading out this data. So you spoke to regulatory capture earlier, but I think what a lot of people are missing is, what about data capture? He who owns the data will win because their models are going to be the best. But if you have all these universities in all these different countries, building up these robust online data sets, who owns the data? It's open source. It can't be kept up with.
Yeah, actually, I'm actually a bit surprised that there is no such initiative yet. I took a note of that. I just want to research it a little bit more, because this makes so much sense. And also, I was speaking about, like, all the governments should be incentivized to produce and label as much data as possible about
1,000,000% agree.
in a transparent way, because sooner or later you're gonna have a facial recognition company coming in your country, and you're gonna have social unrest if there's it's not accurate. How do you make it accurate? By making sure you supply the data, right?
Correct. So there's a couple examples in America right now, but one that sticks out is one of our research interns. He was doing a paper on bias in AI, and so I sent him a couple articles, and there was a young Black female in New York, I think it was. So the police were running a facial recognition on her, and it wrongfully identified her as having, I think, all these warrants. So she was in jail for like a week.
Wow.
Because of just misidentification.
Yeah.
So, once again, non-white Western males are feeling the brunt of the bias in AI right now. So that's a huge, to your point about social unrest, that's why I brought that up. When you have a certain group that gets targeted, you're creating internal problems. So I think that's a brilliant solution that you brought up with regards to governments actually labeling this data and providing it, to these companies, because once again, there's privacy concerns that are going to have to get, addressed. And I know we're just bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah.
But, I think these are the conversations that need to be had in places that me and you don't, currently sit in, right?
Yeah. And something else we didn't touch upon so far is, so we are speaking about regulation when it comes to AI solutions and the data, but perhaps another area I'm just curious to explore now is, do we need certain regulation in what industries AI can be applied, and how can we see how many jobs would be lost, and how do we make that up? Because basically the AI would have a big impact, and unless this is kind of managed through regulation, there's going to be a social unrest as well. I'm just curious to get your thoughts and what applications you have seen that automate certain people out of their job, and what are just your thoughts on the topic.
So I'll take a quote from the Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, Google's DeepMind, right? And he spoke previously about humans being infinitely adaptable. With regards to jobs, I think that what you're going to see is just like with everything. So who's impacted by the current Gen AI push right now? Content marketers. writers, people that generate content, right?
Mm.
What about construction workers?
Not yet.
Phase.
Yeah.
Not yet, right? So the way that humanity operates is kind of a phased approach when it comes to anything, really, right?
Mm.
And so I think that why I brought up Demis's statement was humanity, from a job perspective, will have time to adapt, right, to this migration. Now I know a bunch of the hype cycle pushers and stock pump and dumpers just want to throw all your money in AI. It's taking over. It's going to be here tomorrow, and it's going to make everything. And anybody that has half a brain knows that it takes time, and a lot of industries aren't built to adopt new technologies. And I'll give you a prime example, and this is one we deal with: agriculture sector. You can have all the greatest, newest tech, and you can introduce it in these certain spaces, and you'll see all these stories on LinkedIn and these news articles on VentureBeat and all of that. The fact of the matter is 98%, 99% of the farming still done the exact same way.
And why is that in your opinion?
Because people are stuck in their ways. And you got to think about something like farming. It's been around for centuries. When did the agrarian side of man kick in, right? And if people have been farming and it's been working the same for centuries, why change? Well, maybe I'll add this little bit of tech, and maybe I'll add this little bit of tech, but I'm still not going to change. And so I think that's indicative of human nature, right? People do not like to change habits. When's the last time you did anything brand new?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm forcing myself to do, but I would say maybe 1-2 things per month. But I'm very conscious of that and trying to force myself to do it to rewire the brain a little bit. But it's it's forced. Yeah, it's forced.
Correct. So we have these jobs that are habitual, right? AI is not going to impact. They say AI in healthcare and this, that, and the other. That sounds great. But say you have a car crash and you have an EMT come to the scene of that car crash. What do you think? How long do you think it's going to be before AI gets there? Do you think it's going to be next week? Next month?
Maybe years.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's my point. So we will have time on a sliding scale. Well, maybe not sliding scale, but on a scale, we will have time to adapt. And I just think it's just going to be another tool. It's going to be like a hammer. Most people have hammers in their houses. That doesn't mean everybody's a construction worker, right? Or everybody's a carpenter. It's just how it is. When I was growing up, everybody had a needle and thread sewing kit in their house. Everybody's not making their own clothes though. So it's just kind of an extension to expand the utility of what humans can already do, is my opinion. So there'll be time. It's not going to impact jobs like people think, like everybody's, it's the end. And I don't know if you guys hear it with Lyrise, but the whole Gen AI is going to replace developers, blah, blah, blah.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking whether I should just ask you, because that was my next question. I was like, is that related? Because when you were speaking about replacement, that's the first thought that popped up, that everyone was saying that a copilot would replace developers. But then what we saw, actually, there was a bit of a, like some people were laid off, but it was not because of copilot. It was just because up until 2020, 2021, they were hiring a lot because the market, the public value of the companies kept being growing up, which led to going up of the private markets, a lot of free money going in. So a lot of people were hired that were not actually needed. Like a good example, Twitter, 80% of the people are gone, but not because they were replaced by Copilot, just because you can run the same thing with 20% of the stuff. But then the question is, okay, so we see that human and machine. So the question is, I was looking at the graph, and you see that as some jobs get automated, there are new jobs that get created. Prompt engineering is a great example. I'm curious,
Correct.
have you seen other new jobs that have emerged, or do you foresee a new jobs will emerge based on what you know today and what you have seen on the market and based on what you've talked to your peers?
I promise you, in every industry, in every vertical, new jobs will be created because people will want to leverage this newfound power, right? Whether it's for optimization or, cost cutting, however, better resource management, whatever, benefit or opportunity it becomes applied to. So I'm not going to sit here and say the next job will be, and try to predict the next prompt engineering. But I think in every line of work, yes, there will be a job in every line of work within the next 5 years in every industry, every sector that we could not have imagined 5 years ago in the 2010s, 2020s. It'll be something like, can you believe that actually exists? It feels like we're living in the Jetsons or, something like that. No. And from the developer perspective, I think, Copilot's only going to do what Stack Overflow did, to me, my personal opinion, right? It's going to make good developers better. It's going to make better developers great. It's going to make, it's going to cause a lot of mediocre developers to get exposed when they have to bug fix or things like that. So I think it's a joke to think that Copilot's going to replace developers, because the first time I heard of that, I told it was from one of the developers we work with, and I told him, let's just say you're right. Take your MacBook into your mom right now, bust open Copilot, and tell her, build me a website that does this, and this, connects to Stripe or PayPal or whatever payment gateway you have, and collects all of this user's data and stores it in a DynamoDB, and tell her to say all of that and see if it generates it, and then deploys it.
Yeah. Could possible, but to take months to figure out the small details, that it's second nature to a real developer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, actually, Michael, this was a really pleasant conversation. I really enjoyed to talk about AI safety, regulation, get your thoughts. I would love actually to do it again, speak on another topic.
Sure, whenever. I always enjoy our conversations, brother. Thank you.
Is there something you wanted to share with the audience with respect to what you guys are building, or how they can reach out to you and follow up with some other questions, etc.?
Sure. You can go to, Falcons.ai is our web address. We're on LinkedIn. We've recently been pushing some models to Hugging Face. And the reason we do that is because we are, truly in belief of AI for good. We feel like it is important. What we do is important. AI matters, and more of the, really smart people with, aptitude should really be looking into this field, because this will be my opinion, Sundar Pichai called it, the next fire moment for, humans. But I think that it's bigger than atomic energy, right? Because it's more accessible and you can do more with it from a utility function. So I would just say, reach out to us, download our models on Hugging Face. We have a YouTube. Go to our YouTube. Watch all of the different videos. If you're looking for an edge case or a capstone project for your school as an AI student, there's plenty of examples that you can pull off of that, or just reach out to us directly.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate your time, and stay in touch.
Definitely, brother. Thank you again. Tell everyone back at the office we said hello.